Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I think we're getting more and more attendees joining us. Welcome, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the break and you're feeling energized for our next session, session 13. I know we're all experts at this by now, guys, but before we kick off, I just wanted to draw your attention to the session guidelines that I know the Gala team is going to add to the chat in a few seconds, and also a couple of tips from me. So please make sure that you use the Q&A function, the button, to enter any questions that you'd like the panelists to answer. Hopefully towards the end, we will have some time. And also, if you're using the chat, remember that you can select who gets your messages. So rather than all panelists, if you want your greetings and your comments to go to everybody, make sure you select all panelists and all attendees. And last but not least, at the end of the session, make sure that you fill in the survey. We would love to hear your feedback. You can go back to the session page on the schedule and click on the session survey. And now I would like to introduce you to our three panelists, Zach Hartkin, Sean Kelly, and Anjo Nava. Welcome, three of you. Zach is currently the program manager of localization at Lyft. He has been with the company for over 6 years now, and he started as a driver. He's joining us from San Francisco, and Zach's secret superpower is that he played in the World Series of Poker in 2014 and 2015. We're also joined by Sean, who is currently Senior Account Manager at Mother Tongue and has been with the company for over 2 years, following her Master's in Localization at MIS. She's joining us from Long Beach, California, and her secret superpower is that she has skillfully mastered the art and sport of pole dancing. And last but not least, Anjo. He is an expert copywriter and transcreator with 12 years of experience under his belt, 8 of those collaborating closely with Mother Tongue. He's joining us from the Mexico City area, and Anjo's secret superpower, or perhaps not so secret for his followers, is that he is the creator and host of a top 30 podcast in Mexico. Welcome, Zach, Sean, and Anjo. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Hi, Maria. Hi, everybody.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to our three panelists so that they can tell you a little bit more about themselves and how this meeting of the minds came about. Zach, take it away.
Absolutely. Here, I want to get my screen share here, so just so I can have that. Perfect. Cool. So yes, as Maria said, my name is Zach Haitkin. I am the program manager for localization and translation at Lyft. If you're familiar with Lyft, it's a transportation company that offers rideshare, bikes and scooters, public transit integration, and more recently consumer rentals as well. I've been at the company for six and a half years and started as a driver even before that, and have held roles in customer support, operations, competitive intelligence, and now run the localization program.
Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Anjo Nava. And as Maria said, I'm a freelance copywriter and translator. I have a 12-year experience working in ad agencies. Some of the largest ones, at least in Mexico, Publicis and McCann. I was there for 12 years. And now I've been working for the last 8 years as a transcreator, primarily with my good friends of Mother Tongue.
And I'm Sean, as Maria mentioned. She pretty much introduced my background, and I'm representing Mother Tongue. We are a language service provider headquartered in London, with offices in LA area and Long Beach, also in Singapore. And we have, we're focused on transcreation, and we have about 30 years of experience in the field of advertising localization. And then I've been the account manager for the Lyft account since the beginning of their partnership with Mother Tongue.
Awesome. Yeah, before we get started, just want to address one thing real quick, specifically since our presentation is about meeting in person, and in the current world climate, it's not exactly safe, or the ability to meet in person is not as easy right now. So we definitely recognize that and want you to take the the learnings that we have, and when it is safe to meet, be able to apply those at that time.
Awesome. So to start off, Zach, why don't you tell us a little bit about how Lyft's localization program developed? What was your initial localization need?
Sure. So in the very beginning, Lyft, as a fast-moving company, was built for one language, one currency, and one country. When we launched in Canada, Lyft currently operates in the US and Canada, we solved the currency and the country problem, but we still were only available in English. So there was a need that we identified to be able to offer languages other than English. So it was a pretty huge lift that we needed to do in order to make that happen. So we wanted to make sure that, because Lyft is a very specific brand, our brand voice is incredibly important to us. We wanted to make sure that we captured that. So I have a couple of examples here of the Lyft voice. So you'll see here, this is an ad campaign that we ran a couple of years ago. The Lyft voice is unique, it's friendly, it's playful, it's approachable, and we definitely wanted to make sure that we captured that in any language that we localize into. We started with Spanish because we identified that as being the highest non-English language being used by our users, looking at device language. And so what we did was we had a round table. We gave a piece of content to several vendors to translate specifically driver material, which is, the stakes are a little bit higher when it comes to drivers, since they're the ones that interfacing with our app for a lot longer. So we took a look, and Mother Tongue was by far the superior translation. They really did a great job of capturing our voice. And so we ended up going with them, and they did a great job and have continued to do a great job with not just Spanish, but all the languages that we've localized into. So the other thing too is we've noticed that because Lyft moves so fast, we needed a vendor that moved fast with us, and Mother Tongue has always been able to keep up. Sean and Anho have been great partners with us on that. And yeah, so I do have one other example here of the Lyft voice. You'll see these are definitely not straightforward sentences. So it's really important that we make an effort to transcreate these and make sure that we get the voice right on.
Awesome. So after you reviewed our test piece, you decided to move forward with Mother Tongue. At what point in the partnership did you decide that you wanted us to come to your headquarters in San Francisco? What triggered that decision?
Yeah, so there were a few reasons why we wanted to do it. Probably one of the biggest ones was actually security. Lyft has a VPN, like most companies, where we are not able to expose a lot of the content outside of that. So we had to make sure, if we wanted people to review translations externally, we had to make sure that they were using Lyft equipment. And so rather than send it out, we just wanted to bring people on site. We also really wanted to, something we say at Lyft is being customer obsessed. And so if you think about it, Lyft is really a two-sided marketplace, riders and drivers. So we really wanted to make sure, particularly on the driver side, that we got everything right, because these drivers are using our platform to make money. And that's incredibly important, that they're able to understand and be effective with their time and maximize their time on the road. So the stakes were really high there, and we really wanted to make sure that that because it's their livelihood, that we got everything right. So I have a couple of examples of the app itself. So right now the Lyft app is available in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. So this is the rider app here. We do have more languages coming soon, so stay tuned for that. So seeing them side by side, like I said, the Spanish app was the first one that we went into, and then the driver app as well. So it was super important that we really nailed things on the driver side, and having writers and translators on site was really the most important part of that. So what I am curious about actually is, and we have a poll that you should be seeing on your screen shortly, is how do all of you typically communicate with translators working on your content? So we made the decision to bring people on site, but do you typically just communicate directly through a messaging app like Slack or Microsoft Teams, Skype? Do you hold virtual meetings or calls directly with the translators? Is it just email? Do you actually bring people on site as well? Do you communicate just through your LSP, or do you not speak to your translators at all? So go ahead and give that a look there, and we'll take a few minutes to look at it. I will say that we actually didn't know that, from what we understood, bringing translators on site was not something that was very common. We'd heard of other companies doing it before, but not many. So we thought this was just a great opportunity to really bridge the gap and build the relationship between us and our LSP. So yeah, let's see, are we able to see? Okay. All right, so mostly email, very few in-person on-site meetings. Okay, all right. So that kind of makes sense. We'll get into it a little bit later, particularly on the messaging app side. But yeah, email, that's kind of the one I expected. So awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for
I'm
responding.
really happy to see that no one said we don't. As an account manager, that makes me happy.
Good. So Ano, I have a question for you. What was the experience of working remotely on Lyft Copy?
Sorry, guys, I missed my mute button for a second. For starters, Zach, as you know, we don't have Lyft in Mexico, so it's hard to know exactly what you're translating. I was fortunate enough to use Lyft before I started working for the account because of my own personal travels. So I used Lyft when I was traveling to the States. And although it has a very similar user experience as other rideshare platforms, as you mentioned, it has a very unique voice. And I noticed right away when I started using it that how it spoke to at least at me as a rider, it had its own voice. So one of the problems before we actually started this relationship was that, as it happens a lot, there wasn't a lot of context when I started writing for Lyft. So you found, for example, lines that said that had the word tip, and you didn't actually know if you were talking about giving extra money for someone who actually provided service, or if it was someone, or if it was about giving out advice, you know. So it was kind of hard at the beginning, but now it has considerably changed, as everybody will see it.
Yeah, so in order to help address some of those context issues that Anho was mentioning, and also to address the security issues, Zach, you made the decision to bring Mother Tongue and some of our writers to your headquarters in San Francisco. So can you tell us a little bit about what we did during the on-site experience?
Absolutely. So not only did we feel like it was important to review the content, make sure that the writers had access to all the content that we wanted them to review, but we also wanted to give them an idea of the Lyft culture. I've been with Lyft quite a long time. When we were about 200 employees, we're just about 5,000 now. And it's been a journey. Of course, as any company grows, it's not going to be quite as tight knit, but I will say that the camaraderie at Lyft is something that is unique, and something I've watched that's been sustained throughout the entire time. So this is a little piece of installation art here. It's a neon sign, and you'll see that Share the Ride is a different color. That actually doesn't light up unless two people are there. And I think that speaks to the culture of inclusivity and making sure that people are working together. And it truly is, everybody feels like you're on the same team, whether or not you work together directly. So we did a tour of the office, just a quick introduction to what Lyft is, the history of Lyft, the growth of it. We're still, our co-founders still run the company. So the vision, Lyft's vision, improve people's lives with the world's best transportation, is something that from the very beginning and still now that that we work on. So this is our war room that we were able to put content up on screen and be able to review everything. It's actually a secret room on one of the floors at the company where you have to go through a painting. There's a painting in the wall that you have to push on to get to, and it's very private, and we wanted to make sure that we had a space where we weren't being bothered at all. So the other thing too is we wanted to do a test ride. So while we were there, we actually had Anho take a phone, a test phone, and pretend to be both the rider and the driver. Sean did this as well, to be able to see what the experience is, because it's not always easy. You know, if you, even with visual context, if you see it in the TMS, you don't always understand exactly which screen goes to which screen, and then to see the process from beginning to end is actually incredibly valuable. Which is what we thought. So you'll see Anno here in the back of a car interacting as either the driver or the rider. I'm not quite sure which one he is in this pic. But then we went up to Sutro Tower. If you've been to San Francisco before, you can actually see it in my background here. So they're up at the tower itself, and it was just a great experience to get out on the road and see what it's like to be on the rider and the driver side. And then we ended up duplicating this process for other languages as well. So this just gives you a sense that we really were able to strengthen the bond, build the bond between us and Mother Tongue and our translators directly, to really give them a great sense about what Lyft is all about. The last thing I'll say, we also went to our bikes and scooters warehouse. So as Lyft gets into micromobility, really giving the translators a chance to see what an e-bike, see what a scooter is. Couldn't ride them, insurance reasons, but at the very least to be able to touch them, to see them with their eyes and understand what that device is, really gives a better sense than any visual context ever could.
Yeah, so this experience of coming on site was totally new to me, and Anho, I know it was brand new for you as well as working as a transcreator. So Anho, can you talk a little bit about what your expectations were versus the reality of the experience?
Sure. I actually had no expectations whatsoever, because for me, the poll results are very surprising. For me, it was my very first time heading into one of my clients' headquarters. Obviously, while I was working at ad agencies, I used to visit my client's headquarters, but never ever as a trans creator. I always had a very close relationship with the LSPs I worked for, especially with Mother Tongue. But this was so new to me that I was just blown away. I think it's, as Zach mentioned, for me, it was super important to not only test the app and see how it worked, and especially from the driver side, because I had used it before as a rider, but to see what the experience was like for drivers. But it was super important to get to sense that community that was inside Lyft. One of the one of the most important things that I grasped, that I captured, was how they all, like Zach mentioned, I mean, and I was an outsider, but I felt like I was an employee for the time I was there. I felt I was part of the team. I felt I was part of the company for even though it was for a little while. So I think that if you start getting all that sense of how the company you're transcreating for speaks, you're going to be able to deliver a better translation or transcreation in general. So I was blown away. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, for me, I had no idea what to expect either. I really initially thought this was all about the security and access. And I remember it was a really unusual request for a client to ask us to fly people out to San Francisco. And so I remember trying to rack my brain and come up with anything else that we could do. Can we send them devices? What can we do that we don't have to arrange travel for people? I really didn't expect it to give us the really hands-on experience and the really warm reception that we had at Lyft. And for me personally, it's definitely really valuable to be able to not only meet the Lyft team in person, but also meet many of our writers in person. Yeah, so it was, yeah, also blew me away. Zach, what were your expectations?
Awesome. Yeah, I would say mainly the ones you mentioned to really familiarize translators with our voice, our content, our brand, have them understand at a really deep level what Lyft is and what it stands for. I also expected to be able to review more content than we would be able to do remotely, and really strengthen and build the relationships that we expected to have for the long term. So this was really setting us up for the long haul to be able to have long-term, high-quality translation success. And I have to say it was overachieving in all of those aspects.
Speaking of that overachieving, how did you make the case internally to get a cost approval for this onsite? How did you demonstrate the ROI? Sure.
Yeah, so when we were looking at what this would cost and what the potential increase would be in terms of translation quality, I was able to take a look at some of Lyft's top line metrics. Can't share specifics, but the main number that we look at is really bookings, which is the amount of money that's churning through the system, what riders pay, what drivers are paid, things like that. So what I was able to calculate was if there was even a 0.1% increase in driver productivity, that would be a break-even point for us. So I figured, and I brought this to, I was rolling up to a product manager at the time. I brought this to him, and he took one look at it and said, absolutely. I mean, I have to think that 0.1% is something that we can hit to break even here. So I have a couple of metrics I wanted to share as well, both on the rider and driver side. So the first thing that we saw, particularly on the rider side, was this is the metric here: request to first ride, which is someone opening the app and then actually taking a ride. Another word we call it is conversion. And so what we saw when we actually pushed out Spanish Live to external users in December of 2018, it was really easy for us to just divide and say, okay, users that had their phone in Spanish in 2018 were seeing English. Then all of a sudden, when we turned on Spanish in 2019, they were getting a different experience. What we saw was a 7 percentage point increase, about a 10% increase in the conversion rate for riders. So that means people that were in the past had preferred Spanish but were getting English. Now we're getting Spanish when they prefer Spanish, and we're able to convert and take rides at a higher rate. Just to quickly go over a few other metrics as well. So on the driver side, we saw an increase. Remember the 0.1% in productivity? Well, we saw a 4.2% increase in the amount of rides that drivers were doing. And I mean, that's pretty incredible in terms of how much we were able to see an increase in that. Driver ratings were up, driver satisfaction was up, driver earnings were up. So not only were they doing more rides, they were earning more. And so it goes to show you the success of Spanish when we launched it. And then on the rider side, particularly in activation. So activations is someone who downloaded the app but hadn't taken a ride, and then they actually took their first ride. Saw a 10% increase among Spanish language users on that. 4% increase in rides, 3.9% increase in sessions, which is opening up the app itself. And then we also saw a decrease in riders contacting the driver. And I think that speaks to if there was any confusion in the past, the rider might contact the driver to make sure that everything was all right. But now that they were seeing the app in their preferred language, there was no need to contact the driver. So that to me tells me that there's an increase in understanding of how the platform works on the rider side. So it's really great to see these metrics, and just kind of confirmed what we all thought, that we were able to actually drive some meaningful numbers here with launching a new language.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that really great data. What were some of the other more intangible positive results of the onsite? Zach, if you want to start.
Yeah. So I'd say number one was time, and as they say, time is money. So being able to save an incredible amount of time just by answering questions, clarifying different pieces of content, and overall being able to the sheer volume of content that we were able to review and how quickly we were able to do it. So, of course, in a TMS, you're able to raise issues or over email, you can say, tell me about this and work on that way. But really having two people in the same room is nothing beats it, honestly. And so what we're able to do is a lot of our web content on Lyft.com, we reviewed pretty much the whole site over the course of a couple days. And then we were able to generate a report that looked at our messages, our emails, our SMS, our push notifications, and then rank them by the ones that get sent out the most and review the ones that are most visible first. And we were able to get through this list. The way we pulled the report, we could see the percentage of coverage. So as we went down the list, we knew that we had reviewed 10% of messages, 30% of messages, and I think we ended up getting down into the 80–90% of messages here. So I would say that definitely really was a positive result. Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, it was to have a greater understanding of what the Lyft brand was about, and especially the Lyft products. I have actually a little anecdote that I want to share with everybody here that's very comparable. When I first started in advertising, I was working for the BMW account, and they took us all to one of the Mexico City's largest racetracks, which is actually the largest, Autódromo Hermano Rodriguez. And we actually got to drive the cars and in very extreme situations like soapy roads and stuff like that. And you actually felt how the car responded to those situations. So when you were back at the agency, it was very easy for you to write about it or just to explain to everybody your experience about it. So for me, going to the headquarters, starting this amazing relationship with Lyft, with Zach, with the team, also getting to know better my colleagues at the LSPs with Mother Tongue. I just started to get a better feel of the whole product. And so now when I'm facing, for example, when I talked about context, now when I face similar strings where before I didn't know what I was talking about, now I immediately know. And actually now we do share those experiences and those knowledges with fellow writers who are also working for the Spanish Lyft account, and that happens, and I'm sure that happens for other languages too. So for me, it was amazing to get to know the product better, and that way the functionality of the app in Spanish, it will translate as seamless as the English. How about you, Sean?
Yeah, from my perspective as localization account manager, it's always so much easier to work when we are users of the product and we understand intimately the client's needs and their situation. And so I really felt like this was a great opportunity to get hands-on experience with Lyft and really understand what they need, and also spend less time kind of being a communication gatekeeper between our translators like Anjo and Zach, and instead focus on how I can add value as an account manager and help Lyft develop their localization strategy. I really think that this experience helped build a strong long-term relationship between Lyft and Mother Tongue, where Mother Tongue is very directly tied into Lyft's processes. And so related to kind of that localization strategy aspect, Zach, I know on the client side, it's often difficult to make localization tangible and visible to other people within your company. How did having us on site, did that help kind of raise the profile of localization at Lyft?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, I will be honest, it's still a struggle sometimes to raise awareness and get buy-in from teams, but having that physical presence being on site really kind of forced the issue in a lot of ways. I do remember there, I'm a member or one of the leads for our employee resource group for Hispanic and Latinx folks at the company. And I brought Anho to that meeting, and there was, you know, a dozen people in that room from a lot of different teams, from product, from engineering, from marketing, and being able to introduce Anho to all of those people and say that, you know, this is the person working on our account, just really hammers home the idea that localization, it is a thing, it is something important, and it is something that we need to do. And then going forward, I've definitely made an effort to include, particularly for transcreation projects with marketing, we've included the writers with direct engagement in marketing briefs. And because of that close relationship that was built during these on-sites, I'm able the translators themselves actually pitch directly to the marketing team. And if there's feedback, I play more of a conduit. Same thing with Sean here. Sean and I kind of play this middle person role as we're communicating back and forth. But it's just much easier, and it's the transfer of information from client to directly to translator is a lot easier. Sean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think from the account perspective as well, I got to meet with several people on site that I probably would not have been introduced to over email. I got to meet with a couple different product managers, as well as like the lead of the early stage markets team at Lyft, to talk about like our SLAs and also some future needs. And I think it was really important to help build those relationships and also understand some of the background of the account, some of the pressures that might be going on behind the scenes. So I thought it was a really helpful experience to be there and be visible. So speaking of being there, Zach, what recommendations do you have for other companies that are considering bringing translators on site? You have a limited time together, so what are the things, you mentioned the messaging templates, what do you recommend to focus on?
Sure. Well, I think at the very core of it, it's making sure that you are prepared and you do your homework before bringing translators on site. So like I said, we're able to pull this report for most frequently sent messages. That was something that we prepared and were ready with when we were actually, before we actually had people come on site. So really making sure that you stack rank your content by the most visible, the most important, and go over that first. Also, glossary. I cannot stress this enough. I don't think this is a secret, but it's certainly something that we've learned and confirmed, that really having a deep, in-depth discussion about your glossary and making sure that that's not only ready to go before you localize, but it's a continued conversation. I know Anho and I meet on a regular basis to be able to look at terms that we have and terms that we've agreed on in the past. We see them evolve over time, and we've edited those terms. And so just continuing to make sure to focus on that and have your glossary be an ever-evolving resource for your translators. Looking at web content in context, being able to do that on site all at once was really valuable. I would say if you can recreate the consumer experience as closely as possible, whether that's an app, whether it's a website, try and group it together as much as you can. If you have a two-sided marketplace like Lyft, you can have someone experience it as a rider, as a driver, you know, have them access it through the app, have them look at the website, have them access, if they, you know, look at the new user experience, if they log on to the website, if they never downloaded Lyft, have them go to the website, click on the download button, then follow it all the way into the app. So really recreating the entire experience as a whole, and allowing a translator to go through that either before they localize or while they're doing the translation is really key, and something I definitely recommend.
Yeah, those are all really great recommendations. What about if a company is not able to actually bring people on site? What can other companies learn from this experience to kind of still build that connection?
Sure, particularly in this time of video conferencing right now, I think that's very relevant at the moment. So I would say build strong personal connections. You know, I'm sure that a lot of us have had experiences with seeing a name in our TMS in terms of the translator that's working on it saying vendor-es-2, which is fine, but I will say that there's something to be said by building a personal connection and having someone's name and just really getting to know them, I think is really important. You know, meet digitally face to face. For example, for Simplified Chinese, which we localize our web content into, we weren't able to bring them on site, but we had several video calls with them to allow them to learn more about Lyft, to experience the app. I remember sharing my screen and actually going through the whole app experience with them. So again, if you have a writer in a different country, they're not able to access the app, walk them through it over a call. And then messaging app channels, creating specific channels for each language, or creating a channel for writers and LSPs and clients to all communicate together. I really will say that having, and there's a very lively Spanish discussion channel on our Slack space that is very active, and not only can they translators engage with us, the client, but they can engage with other writers as well, as Anho mentioned. And what that does is it facilitates the whole process. So I would really say, if your LSP is open to it, really try and get everyone in the same room virtually together to be able to solve translation issues. Anho, what do you think companies can learn from this?
Yeah, as I was saying, if you're not able to fly someone to your headquarters or whatever, but maybe you can provide as much context and reference material for them to be able to get to know your product better. I cannot stress how important that is, and I usually get a lot of briefs that I even had some advertising material that you don't even have a visual reference. So in general, it's very hard. I know this is like a constant for everybody, for all LSPs. Some clients don't even have their own visual aid still available to deliver. But as much context as possible. But also, and this is also something new in this new working relationship that we all build together, work gets done so much faster, because if you do find something that you don't understand, or you don't know what it's exactly, since we have this so much closer relationship, now I'm able to speak to you, Zach, directly, open up my Slack channel and hit you up with a message, and you'll solve it in seconds, while before that piece could be on hold for a whole day or something like that. And if you're not available, by having the people like Sean and other project managers, account managers going on site and getting to know your product better, they'll be able to also explain or be able to figure out what's going on before way faster, and so therefore you'll be able to have your product, the end piece, delivered quicker and more accurate, and in general with better quality. You, Sean.
Yeah, so obviously one big theme of this conference is collaboration, and I really think that language service providers have to adjust to this kind of new reality of collaboration in the localization industry. Lyft was kind of the first to ask for this much collaboration, but I'm seeing it more and more from other clients as well. I think that as localization account managers, we need to change from being kind of this black box that translation goes in, translation comes out, to being more open to the direct connection with our clients. And I think giving clients more access to our translators makes a more personally valuable experience for everyone involved, and also definitely helps to create a higher quality transcreated product. And as I mentioned before, it gives us as LSPs the opportunity to share where we're also adding value to this process by advising on processes and advising on strategy. And it really helps to build the trust between the LSP and the client to show that you're open to direct communication. So last but not least, why don't we all share what we thought was the most valuable part of the experience? And I'll start with Anhal.
Sure. I think I already mentioned this. For me, it was so important to build a closer relationship, first of all, with my LSP, with Mother Tongue, with Sean, with the rest of the team, get them to know them in person, and having a closer relationship with them, but also with the client, which is so new for me in this business. As Zach mentioned, we go over the content over and over. We revise it. We question it, but because we all get so committed to delivering the best experience possible for the end user, for the people who are actually driving the cars, trying to make an earning. Lyft is all about community, and if you get to know those values, if you get to experience those values, then you're able to write about them with your own words. So people, and Spanish in my case, it's so broad, so and people like Spanish speakers come from all over the world and have all those different ways of saying each thing and trying to find the best word, and we go over and over and over. So for me, I think that's the most valuable part, like delivering the best product possible by having a closer relationship with you guys. And how about you, Zach?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, plus 1,000 to the building the strong relationship. I'm really glad because my goal in organizing these events was to definitely make you feel like you are part of the team. And so the fact that you were able to get that, you are absolutely part of the team. You might not be a Lyft employee, but you definitely represent us in a way that we feel is amazing. So I feel like this has had a really great long-term effect on the quality of our translation work. And it's led to a reduction in the amount of questions from translators about certain pieces of content. Now, of course, we still get questions from translators, but now instead of the questions being, what does this mean or what is this about? It's more like, how can I make this translation perfect? How can I go a lot deeper on what this content actually is and what it's saying? And what that really does is it opens up to us sounding much more natural. And that is what leads us to really capturing the Lyft voice, the Lyft brand with our localized content. So I will say that Lyft doesn't do a great job in providing visual context a lot of the time. So the fact that we're able to have our writers understand the nuances of the Lyft voice has also been key to our success. And then just the sheer amount of content, the fact that we're able to review all of that, the end-to-end app experience, web content, messaging while they were on site, that it's so much more than we could have ever done remotely. And yeah, I'd say that was probably the most valuable things that we were able to take away from this experience. And Sean?
Yeah, for me, personally, one of the things that was huge was getting to meet our writers in person. Instead, we talk over email and sometimes over the phone all the time, but getting to actually put names to faces in person for the people working on Lyft was really valuable to me personally. Also, seeing the way that meeting with Zach and the team and interacting with the Lyft product at the Lyft office really sparked excitement in our writers about working on the copy and seeing the change in the way that they talked about Lyft before and after. Because even after we'd done this like with Spanish and we were bringing in some of our other languages like Canadian French and Brazilian Portuguese, there was still kind of some skepticism at first, like, what are we really doing here? But then by the end, everyone was like so excited to go back and work on Lyft content, and they really were like, oh, I get the voice, I get the brand, I want to use Lyft, like I'm really excited about it. And also getting to see kind of a peek behind the curtain at some of how the quality assurance and engineering side of localization works at Lyft was really helpful as well, to kind of get perspective on what's going on besides just the regular contact that I have with Zach as the localization program manager. So that was my big takeaways. And I think then we're ready to open it up to questions, Maria.
That is an amazing story. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for sharing. I think collaboration is the name of the game, Sean. I think you've nailed it on that. And certainly being able to have sort of the data to back it up and to back the benefit and the impact that that kind of closer collaboration has had is very important for the businesses as well. So thank you all very, very much. We have a good few questions from the audience, and it's good. We have a few minutes to cover them. There were a couple that had come in initially just with regards to whether it was the client covering the cost of the on-site visit, etc. And I think, Zach, you did cover that during your presentation. Lyft indeed covered the costs, and also some of the alternative approaches, especially sort of in light of COVID and just in general, other approaches to sort of maintain contact. And I think you covered those as well, including the Slack channel for Spanish, etc.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Excellent. We do have a few others. Paula was wondering whether you do separate localized ads, campaigns, or do you release them at the same time?
Can you clarify that?
Yeah.
So I'll ask Paula perhaps to provide a little bit more. The way I understand it is whether you do individual language sort of ads and campaigns, or whether you do sort of SIMship for all the languages, I would imagine.
I think it depends on the market. If we see a market like perhaps Los Angeles, we probably would just want to do Spanish. That doesn't mean that we won't at some point do other languages, but we really want to look at the demographic of a market, particularly if it's ad copy. But for a market like New York, which is incredibly diverse, we might include simplified Chinese or Russian, or even in a market like Vancouver, we've had requests for Punjabi, I think is what we've done up there. So I would say to answer your question, it depends. It really depends on what the target audience is. So sometimes we do multiple languages at once, and sometimes we just do one language at a time.
Okay, great, excellent. We also have a question from Catherine. She's wondering whether Lyft has Spanish or other language speakers in the marketing team in order to have that back and forth that you had described during your presentation, Zach.
There are a handful. I'd like to see more, frankly, on our marketing team, and we are working on that. Lyft has a diversity and inclusion report that we put out every year. If you want to search for that, it's publicly available. So there are a handful of people that are able to engage. I'm not a native Spanish speaker, but I am fluent. I studied Spanish and international studies with an emphasis in Latin America in college. So I'm able to chime in to some extent on Spanish issues. But yeah, so there are a few that are able to engage, but we definitely would like more to give more perspective from our side.
Zach, does your Multilingual Heroes relate to this?
Yes. There is the Multilingual Heroes is a group of volunteers I put together at Lyft that spans all orgs, not just marketing. So I basically put out a call to action to the entire company to say, hey, if you speak another language, and we end up localizing into this language, would you be willing to be available to answer questions now and then about if this translation sounds right, if this copy sounds right, just from the Lyft perspective. I don't tap these people too much because it's they are volunteers and I don't want to put too much on their plate. But I definitely for individual smaller questions. For example, Lyft has 3 core values: be yourself, uplift others, and make it happen. And we ended up doing a transcreation project with Mother Tongue to localize these into 6 languages. Yeah, 6. And so because those are very Lyfty and those don't really exist anywhere else besides Lyft, I definitely had the Multilingual Heroes for each language take a look at those. And there was some feedback, and we were able to go back and forth. And the initial transcreations that we got were great, but we were able to make them a little bit more Lyfty because we had those resources internally. So plus, who doesn't want to be called a multilingual hero, right? So yeah, definitely we do our best to try and engage with native speakers of different languages at the company and allow them to have a say in the process of how we localize.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Very good. We have another question from Alessandra. She's wondering, what pricing model do you use for this collaboration?
Yeah, so it's a mix of per word rate for the strings as well as hourly rates. And we had some day rates for travel stuff as well for specifically for the on-site. But yeah, it's a kind of a hybrid model.
Okay. Excellent. Very good. We have a question from Catherine. It's a little bit long, so I'm going to read. Thank you for sharing these really interesting case studies, Zach, Sean, and Anho. The question is, when it comes to building an ongoing relationship between the client and the transcreation provider, as well as keeping a consistent brand voice in each language that the client needs, how important is it to keep working with the same translator or transcreator for each language? And how do you keep nurturing those relationships long after the in-person visit?
Yeah, go ahead.
You go first, Sean.
Okay, well, as the client, I think you go first because I think you'll have an opinion.
Yeah, so I'd say it's incredibly important, if not imperative and necessary, to have that continuity with the same translator working on our account. I'm not saying it's impossible to switch to a different writer, but the amount of work that it would take to build that same relationship to get to that same level is going to take a while. So I absolutely would say that the continuity is extremely important.
Yeah, I would agree. And we have not had any issues with continuity. Like people, once they're in, they want to stay on this account. So we have had where the content has grown so much that we've had to add additional people. And we haven't yet had the opportunity to bring all of the additional people to Lyft. So we've had kind of a cool development where the people who have been to Lyft can sort of take on a hybrid like language manager role. Like Anho discusses a lot of questions with the 2 other Spanish linguists working on the account, and same with like Canadian, French, and Korean, where we have like the person or people who have been there have a little bit more context that they can share with the rest of the team. So yeah, and then in terms of nurturing those relationships, like we mentioned, we have the Slack channels where we continue to discuss. I think that's the big one. And then like, if there are certain like specific questions or specific projects, it's cool that Zach can say like, hey, Anho, hey, Suki, hey, Vladimir, what do you think of this? And I think having that, like, I value your input really helps kind of maintain that relationship.
And I would like to add, Sean, commitment, because and you kind of touched how that after people went to the Lyft headquarters, met the team, blah blah blah, how excited they were coming back, and but I think we all got very excited and to work on the content, but also very committed, and as you were saying, even though I'm not part of the mother tongue payroll or the Lyft payroll, I get this like second role and trying to get at least all the Spanish, the rest of the Spanish writers as involved and committed with consistency, using the same terms, sticking to the glossary, and that way, and I mean, we are all getting there. Like everybody's, I think that then also what happened is that we started talking between writers that doesn't used to happen for, like, and so that relationship starts spreading, we develop the relationship between the transcreator or the writer, the LSP, and the client, and then with more writers. So it gets like, it starts spreading the relationship.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of answers how to keep it live and how to keep it vivid.
I think client attitude too is huge. Like, it wasn't like Zach said, okay, we're all gonna be in San Francisco for 2 days, and then after that, like, we're out. Like, I mean, I think you can tell Zach's attitude to localization just from this call, that he's always super passionate and super excited and loves language. And it really comes through, like, talking to like me and my colleague on our syncs, and then we can kind of take that positivity and relay it to the translators. And it also comes across in the questions that Zach asks of the translators. It's not like, I think everyone's been in the situation where you have a client that's sort of like, are you sure this is how you translate this? It's more like, hey, I speak some Spanish. What do we think of this? Like, you know, because we have that trust that, you know, we are doing our best to provide the best quality. And if there are, you know, questions or whatever, there's something else going on behind that. So yeah, client attitude is also, I think, incredibly important for maintaining the excitement and alignment.
Yeah, I agree.
See, that's kind of the next question too, Cheetah.
Yeah,
exactly. I was just going to say that because it sort of ties in. It's like Alessandra is wondering how do you sustain that excitement, and that alignment with the brand over time?
Yeah, just continued engagement and just really making sure that I think Lyft is unique in the fact that because of our community involvement, there's a lot of really cool programs. I know I'm biased here, but there's Lyft Up is kind of our philanthropy division and does a lot of things with access to groceries, access to employment, things like that. And so there's a lot of branded terminology that comes through a lot. And at least me being passionate about language, I would also think that people working on our content would also be really interested in not only generating new terms that didn't exist before because Lyft is making it up, but also seeing what our mission is and seeing that it's beneficial for the community. I think that also helps sustain excitement because you're translating something, you're making it more accessible for the community. So that's another way I think that we can maintain that.
Yeah, and I think we, because we're kind of continually learning about Lyft as a product too, that because it is, you know, agilely growing and growing, that our like product education is never like over. So that also helps maintain the excitement.
Excellent, very good. Well, I think we have time for one last question, and Carol is wondering, what does the localization structure looks like at Lyft?
Sure. So as far as the team, you're looking at them. I am a one-person show. I am in charge of the entire program. In the past, when we were ramping up to launch languages, we had a couple more people and have since gone through a restructuring, realignment, and I've taken over the program. But we've got in terms of the way things are divided, we've got web content is one separate piece, server content, app client content, help center content. All of that is divided into different pipelines, so to speak, that flow into our TMS. So it's up to me to make sure that I manage not only the relationships with our LSP, our TMS, but also our internal stakeholders as well. So it is, I have a lot of support. I sit on the marketing team actually right now, but I think as a lot of you know, localization can really sit in a lot of different places. So right now I'm in marketing specifically with the team working on messaging, which is kind of being a gatekeeper to say, no, you can't send this message until it's fully translated. But yeah, that's kind of just a rough overview of the way we look at localization at Lyft right now. Okay.
Fantastic, very good. Well, thank you very, very much to the three of you. Fantastic presentation once again. I love the story, Zach, Sean, and Anjo. And thank you also to all our attendees for joining the session, for asking all the questions, for being super engaged and so active. And I hope to see everybody over in a couple of minutes in Remo for our networking hour. So thanks again, Sean, Zach, and Anjo.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all so
Thank you.
much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.